Good morning. I'm going to possibly try something a little risky, a bit off the wall. But before we do that, there's a couple of Maramakomas that I want to get through. And one is an amazing Marashah, an incredible Marashah here on the famous Gemara that the Gemara that we've spoken about already. If you recall, we did a Meshech Chochmah on it. So we're doing source 17, yeah? Mm-hmm. The Gemara that says that Tariag is the number of mitzvahs. Torah, Tzivalonu Moshe, Torah is 611. Because on Noichi v'lo yelecha mipi hagvura shamanu. Okay. If you remind me, somebody either make a note or a mental note. If hopefully we get through today what I would like to get through, I would like to tentatively and maybe humbly suggest an answer to the Meshech Chochmah's question on the fact that Lo Yihye Lecha, the second one, incorporates within it a number of technical, not making a pesel or a tmuna, etc. Remember, and therefore the numbers didn't appear to add up because it would be 608. If you remember the Meshech Chochmah's question, let's come back to that. But on this, the Maharsha says an incredible idea. It's incredible conceptually, philosophically, kabbalistically, at many different levels. We'll let the Maharsha speak for himself. Yeah. Avol ha'inyan, says the Maharsha. K'moishe kosavti, maybe he's written this elsewhere, I don't know. Shenosan lonu HaKadosh Baruch Hu tariag mitzvahs shesalavin uramachasim. Uba haribui mitzad hamakabel. And this is a theme I would like to develop with you a little bit. Let's get our head around this idea, the following idea. Complexity, multiplicity, more than one is a feature or an aspect that is necessary or possible because of the nature of the makabel, the recipient, not HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What are we dealing with here? What are we learning? We're learning that Hashem is echad, yochid, yuchad. He is one in a way that only He can be one, totally unique. There ain't oid. There is only Hashem.
So can we read Ribo here like the fragmentation of mitzvot is because we need it?
That's what. Yeah, exactly. But more than that, he's saying deeper than that. You know what? I'm actually going to do this with you now. Fasten your seatbelts. I'm going to say something that may appear to be very wild, and I don't know if I'll succeed in explaining it, not because you won't understand it, because I don't know that I'll succeed in explaining it, but I'm going to have a try. And this is really a very, very deep idea. I first came across it in really a number of years ago in the writings of Rabbi Yisrael Eli Weintraub, Zatzal. Let's try this on for size. And it relates directly to this, and if we get this, it's eye-opening. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one in every respect. And one of the questions, although we haven't seen it inside, I've alluded to it a couple of times in the Maharal at the beginning of Netzach, and Greek philosophers dealt with this as well. How is it even possible that multiplicity, because being more than one is the opposite of being only one, right? Remember, oneness is the negation of all, of anything other. So we have tzimtzum. So in Kabbalah we have the concept of tzimtzum, whatever that means. However one understands that, but is there another way almost? And when I say another way, I don't mean that tzimtzum isn't true. Of course it is. But another way of getting around the problem of how ribui can emanate from an achdus haposhut. Yes?
Yeah.
let's actually almost, in the answer, flip it round and say the following. Actually, HaKadosh Baruch Hu only ever created one thing. I'll explain. And this is, at its root, it's a Kabbalistic idea, which I don't fully, can't understand properly, but I'll explain to you what I mean by that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created many, many ingredients. Everything he did up until day 6 were the ingredients that were necessary for the one thing he wanted to create, which is Adam. Mm-hmm. Adam. The sugya of Adam is he created one Adam. From that one, maybe he took a woman, but there was one Adam. Everything before were just the ingredients that were necessary. You're always going to have to come onto a symptom of some sort to allow for anything other than Hashem, fine. But he actually only created one thing. All else is fragmentation of that one thing. We are, and this is absolutely true, there is, and that's even without, I want to acknowledge the sugya of Adam Kadmon without going into it, but it's Adam Echad. Hashem created one Adam. Adam, Shviras HaKelim, whatever, fragmented into many parts. You and I today are a tiny slivers of this one Adam, which the Chazal, when Chazal are called Einei Ha'eda, it is because the part of Adam HaRishon's neshama that they got it from was the bit that corresponded to the Einei Ha'eda. We're now living in the generation of Ikvasa de Mashiach. The Akev is we're working to reverse. And that's why Achdus is, you with me, that's why Achdus between us is so important, because we are one. There is only one. There is one Torah. One Torah. And let me say the following.
How does he put it? We're one little, like...
We are a tiny... Fragment. There is only one primordial, one massive, incredible neshama, one creature, one being. I just used, I don't know what, I'll try again. We are a tiny fragment, a sliver of the one original Bria that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, which is Adam, which was the Tachlis HaBria. I'll say more than that. And it's not me, it's I. Torah and time have the shape, and I say shape, I use the word conceptually, of Adam. Torah and its revelation, development, unfolding is also shaped like Adam. Time is also shaped like Adam. All the Olamos, everything, there is only really at its root one sugya in the world, and that is the sugya of Adam. Torah, the 248 and 365, it's Adam. The revelation and the development of Torah, even down to as Torah is revealed into the world, and the Gilui of Torah's Ha'emes, and the necessity of it in the later part of time. It would take... I'm going to stop here. But I'm trying to give you an insight into the following. HaKadosh, and so what are we saying? Begadol. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is one, created one thing. He didn't create Riboy as such. Of course, there becomes Riboy. But he created one thing.
Outside of himself.
Yeah.
Would you mind to go one step back again? I'm not familiar, but it's not the first time I hear this with we are a reflection of, let's say, everything, and everything is in us, or a little bit there's this reflection. Even fascinating to see it in biology and things like that. Shapes, whatever, be it the golden ratio or Mandelbrot things or whatever, you can see it in different ways. Obviously, he is spiritual and related to Hashem. Now, you said regarding to time, that's the thing that's new to me. Well, how is time and Adam? How is that being proposed?
That's a good one.
we can't go into it really, but now you opened that, so you have
Yes.
to give us more than one sentence.
It's
Sorry.
hard to give you
Seems
more
like-
than one sentence.
I would. Yeah.
I would have to do that separately because it first of all, some of the other bits I'm going to have to look up again. Some of them. I wanted to just make this one high level point that there is only one thing. There is only one sugya in Bria, which is Odom. Odom then fragments, Torah fragments, Torah Shabbal Peh. And the goal is to get everything back together again, that there should be once again an Odom. And if you actually you think about history and you think about even just from a very sort of political, not political, but if you think about sort of the sort of after the Enlightenment all the way down to the so-called sexual revolution of the 60s and everything else, it is what has gone is Odom. There is no Odom. There's only a bunch of behemoths, people doing whatever they want, as long as you don't harm anybody. The dignity, the grandeur of Tselem Elokim, which is Odom, has been totally gone. And that is we see this with our eyes as being eroded more and more and more. There is no difference. But
Eroded, yes. Gone, I don't think so.
well, there's very little left. But why is that relevant? Why is that relevant? It's relevant because then we appreciate, and now if we go back to the Maharsha, if you just remember this concept, there is a huge amount of details, many more. So for example, the structure, let me tell you this I will say, what's known as the Shiur Koma, if you were, and we have to be very careful, the next Ikka we're going to learn, we may start it on Monday, but certainly at the beginning of next Zman, is the next one, which is to negate any Hashem's incorporeality. And it's not as simple as it sounds, in the sense that it's not just, he can't be physical, and it's because actually Odom is the central concept. So, for example, if you would look in certain Kabbalah Sfarim, the more deep and detailed and technical, you will see talk about hair and ears and nostrils and stuff which would appear, they're not chas v'shalom, but it's more than just a moshel.
Yeah.
There's a schematic. Let me flip it round. Give me a second. Let me flip it round. The Shiur Koma is a schematic, a conceptual, schematic, hierarchical structure and diagram, and in a description of all of reality from Ein Sof all the way down to here. Do you know what that looks like? It looks like an Adam.
And the Beit Mikdash and Sfirot.
They follow,
They-
of course, because that's Lu'umaz there.
Yeah.
Now, when I say we have to be, again, extremely careful not to get into the world of Hisgashmus, Chas v'shalom.
Yeah.
But it's the other way round. Instead of man arrogantly, and this is again all back to Hanukkah, the arrogance as the Ramban. Remember the Ramban we learned in Achreimes about Aristotle being the Gaiva, empiricism, only that which I can perceive. He got it right, but he got it the wrong way round. It's the other way round. When we say Hashem has an ear or a hand, he has the real hand, not a physical hand. But because we have to be the engine of the universe, of all of the universe, the entire Shiur Koma, we therefore have to have the equipment which is capable of animating, energizing, bringing hashpah, oir, kedusha, and reaching the furthest parts of the spiritual cosmos. In order to do that, I need to have, that's why we were created last, Ocher V'Kedem Tzartoni, that we have the little bit within us that's able to do that. And then Hashem took that and housed our neshama in a clothing that physically indicates that there's internally, there is left, there is right, there are fingers, there are nails, there's hands, to give me a sense at a conceptual level of what a neshama is. And the neshama is Adam, which is a description of all of reality in a tiny part, which then has really become just a fragmented part of a much bigger one single original primordial reality, which was Adam. And therefore that's what time looks like also, and that's I accept that I have not explained that at all. Torah also, the Beis HaMikdash,
fine.
everything, everything, everything.
You just flip anthropomorphism on
Yes,
its head
correct,
for me, and that's,
correct,
that is,
correct.
That's a big one because
Yeah.
I never heard or thought about that.
Correct.
I thought it the other way around, like some classic.
That's right. With
With
Torah,
Way
it's
to understanding.
absolutely
It's
no,
the real
no,
hand.
no, no, no,
would
no,
that
no, no.
mean? Would that mean
Yes.
that if someone, the less Anochius someone has, the closer he gets to the real concept of a hand?
That's always the case. That's the case with everything.
Yeah, but because we said now that we got the direction, the kivun, you flip
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
now we're saying, okay, like you really don't know what the
It's
concept
with
is.
Torah. It's always, by definition, it's going to be the opposite of what superficially presents itself. Always.
Right.
That's
The
actually
word mask.
it has to be the opposite.
Yeah.
Because chitzonius and pneumius are opposites. Having expressed that, maybe not very well and inelegantly, because I don't claim to fully understand it, but just knowing that, if you have this idea, lots of things become clear. Lots of things become clear, and here is one of them. Let's go back to the Maharshal. Okay, I've got that off my chest.
Can I just vet something on the
Yes,
on the
please.
completely,
Sure.
studio
Yeah.
I just if I would put it into some kind of in a nutshell here, I flip anthropomorphism on its head.
Okay.
Hashem has the real hand. What does it mean? Our hand is somewhat like a gashmi, is
a
a clean,
physical
way to allow us to emulate whatever
to
the real hand is.
it's more than just we've got to be really quite careful about how we sort of define and describe this. But the Reb Chaim Vital in Shari Kedusha says as follows, that forget Reb Chaim Vital for a minute, scrap that, we'll come back. Sometimes when many years ago when I've had sessions in secular sort of primary schools in England, one of the things, and from my good friend Rabbi Malcolm Herman, I think it was he who helped me sort of developing this metaphor, or not metaphor, a simile, a mashal. A very simple one is, if you send a spaceman if NASA is sending somebody into space, forget for a moment the helmet, but you don't go to Primark and buy a spacesuit, right? It's bespoke.
Yeah.
It's the suit, but as you realize, the suit is nothing. You see the suit moving, but you tell the kid understands that 6, 7, 8 year old is able to understand there's a human being behind that. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. This is the suit that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, therefore to house the neshama. Therefore, the neshama, in some sense, must have these contours. Even if it's a conceptual representation of it, this is the housing of the neshama. That means in the neshama there's a concept. It doesn't mean necessarily physically. In fact, it doesn't. But it is that. Is that a bit clearer?
How it manifests physically is like it's dimmed down and it's not.
Just say it's a conceptual representation. It means
Yeah.
there is a concept of left and of right, and
Yeah.
of, like I said, of nails, of fingers, of torso, of etc. Legs, of Netzach v'Hoid, it's Hanukkah and Purim, the Yochinu Boyaz, the two thighs, etc.
Well, there's two problems. One is that you described the middle step. Now you're talking about the neshama, and I was talking about the hand, so to say, of Hashem. So then there's the neshama. Even if we flip it around,
yes,
we're still talking about different. I don't know if it's attributes. But we're coming back into a dangerous territory. If it's Hashem hand, and only Hashem has a real hand, fine. It's not anthropomorphic anymore.
Yes.
However, we're still at the point where we kind of put different areas of expression of divine nature.
But that we've been dealing with for the last 2 weeks.
I know.
However you, notwithstanding any of that, I agree. Okay. That we did the beautiful Rambam in Chelik Aleph Perek Nun Daled to explain all of that. The Pu'ulais, etc. It's in that sphere.
In that sphere.
Of course, in that sphere. Never, ever Atzmusay, mahusay, you can't say it, can't even...
I have to, train my weak mind to...
I thought that's a given. Yeah. Moving on. Let's get back to the Maharsha. So I've said everything I think that I can say about that. Maybe at some point we can revisit some bits of it.
Obviously. Sorry.
Okay, Zog the Maharsha. Let's go back to the Maharsha. And he says as follows. Yeah. So Anochi, here we go. Uba haribui mitzad hamakabel. Ribui comes from the perspective of the makabel. Ki mitzad hanoisein baruch hu, kulam heim ki mitzvahas. You keep rolling everything back up until a singularity.
So going back to Anochi then.
Yes, that's exactly everything. Ki mitzad hanoisein baruch hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave one mitzvah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is Echad, gave one mitzvah. V'zeh shekosov Anochi v'lo yiyeh is one loisasei, one asei. V'amru b'medrash kol advarim diber Hashem u'ma talmud loyma Anochi v'lo yilecha melamed she'omar amokim aseres hadibros b'dibur Echad. Says the medrash that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said all of them in B'dibur Echad, Mashi'i Efshel Abasav Adam, Loimakein. What does that mean? V'hu mavur, Ki hu Echad, u'mitzvoisav Echad, v'lo yukablu ribui mitzidois Baruch Hu. From Hashem's, we remember yesterday we spoke about the perspective of the Noisein and the perspective of the Makabel. We're back to that concept. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is Echad, who created, I've added to you only one thing ever, gave one mitzvah to that one thing that he created.
But it's impossible to makabel.
But that's exactly what he's saying. So Hashem, he's mafurish in the Maharsha here, right? He who echad u'mitzvoisav echad. And we are ato echad shimcha echad mi ka'amcha Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz. It's all about echad. Echad, but the sugya is Adam. Yeah. V'lo yikablu riboi mitzidayis baruch hu. From his perspective, there is no ribui. V'hu ki b'mitzvos anochi sheyemunas hayichud v'hipucha. Anochi, which is the mitzvahs, which is emunas hayichud v'hipucha, and the negation of anything other than that. Lo yeh lecha shlei l'shatav shem shemaim davar echad nichlelu kol halavin v'asiyim. Elo she'i efshel adam loymar kein. Man cannot grasp that. Man who is subject to the linear flow of time, which is fragmentation. Man that is subject to space and time, which is, I can't deal with that. Ki mitzad shehu mutba b'chaymeru bizman, baloi haribui. V'al kein omru ki kol mitzvahs ha'torah nichlelu ba'aseres hadvarim k'mei shekosem Rabbeinu Sadia v'shuv klal kulam b'mitzvahs emunah she'eh ha'sherish u'mekol kulam aval i'efshar lanu lahavin rak b'ribui. Our approach and understanding has to bring to ribui, but at its root, what it is, b'yesod, it's only one. Beautiful, and that's why the Maharsha is. And now with this, by the way, I would like to tentatively suggest the answer to the Meshech Chochmah's question, the Ramban, because it's not about 8 or thing anymore. It is only one. Anochi v'layir will always ever only be one, even though there may be ribui of details within all of them. Of course there will be, but that it is one. Anochi v'layir.
Is it shaykh that the Beit HaMikdash had no makom and no zman? Is it shaykh?
Well, we know that the Kodesh Kadoshim, yes, Eino min Amidah, Ha'orein Eino min Amidah, of course.
So we're saying there you get really close to Anochi in the sense of
Yeah.
you're not bound.
Yeah.
One layer is already peeled away because you're saying everything what the Mekabel is bound by is also like time and space. So if that's already a little bit in the background, then you're like, I thought maybe it's Shayach, I don't know.
We've got the Kodesh Kodashim, the Oren, the Gemara says about the Basra.
Right.
Oren Einim in Amidah, yeah. Let's do something a little. Let's do something a little bit sort of left of field. I'd like to share with you an idea because it's relevant to this and to this time of year, the season of this year. An idea from Rav Moshe Shapiro Zatzal. He talks about the Dor HaPalaga, where it says that they were Vayihi kol ha'oretz sofa achas udvorim achodim. So you appeared to have an achdus, an ichud, which sounded amazing.
There's a nice.
What did they do? Sorry?
There's a nice about Babel also, in the sense of what the Lashon had to do with the.
I'm not going to talk about that today.
Okay.
No. But another aspect. I'm happy to hear what that is, but I want to relate it directly to what we're talking about here. So there was an achdus. There was an achdus. And what did they do with that achdus? They endeavored to build two things: an ir, a migdal, and an ir, a tower and a city. They said, "Hava nilvan aleveinim nisr falesreifa nivna lanu ir umigdal v'roishay bashamayim v'naseh lanu shem." So, the first thing to notice is, said Rav Moshe, is that they were not stupid. The Zohar, he quotes the Zohar Kodesh here, the Zohar Daf Ayin Hey, it says, they did so baraza de chuchmasa. They were smart. Who was leading them? Who was leading them was Nimrod. Nimrod was the Shinar Nimrod, and he says, and the Gemara says in Chulin Peites, Nimrod is somebody, as his name implies, he's Yodea Riboinoi Umiskaven Limrod boy. He knows the essence, the existence and the power of the Borei Olam, and very deliberately wants to defy the authority. That's the name Nimrod, that's the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Nosati Gedula le Nimrod. Says Hashem, I gave him Gedula, he was a king. What did he do with it? Omar, he said, Hava nivna lanu ir. What were they trying to achieve? What they were trying to achieve was as follows. They were saying, at some level, once HaKadosh Baruch Hu has created the world, he's given us Bechira, and we therefore can decide unilaterally, collectively, how things should run, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be maskim to us, because that's what Bechira means, he gave over, and as long as we are, and in many respects they were correct, if we would only be echad, they well understood what we've been discussing today. So therefore they said, we'll be echad. It doesn't mean that literally we're going to take over from Hashem. They weren't stupid. They understood and had an awareness of Hashem way beyond anything that we have. It meant that Hashem had created, they understood something which is echad. So we need to be echad, and we have then, if we are echad, then that is the kavanah of what Hashem wants in the Bria. And then that will be. Their mistake was that any idea of achdus, I mean, the United Nations is the farce, which is the biggest proof of this. Any semblance of achdus that isn't, here's the kicker, there is only one achdus, which is Ato Echad V'Shimcha Echad. Any other attempt to create a real achdus, which is based on the so-called collective will of a bunch of people, is beside its period. Because L'ta'ava, Shlomo Melech says, L'ta'ava yivakesh nifrad. If it is about what I want, then by definition, you will want something else and you will want something else. We may succeed in the short term to put aside some of the differences, but it has to unravel. It isn't a real achdus. And therefore, what they wanted to do was to dominate a political, a cultural, or whatever, a religious, a landscape, and they did. They started creating an achdus. How did they do it? They did it. They created an achdus. Yeah. Says the Zohar. they said, what did they want to do? They want to Ir u'migdal. Ir is Keneged Ir Tzion, and Migdal is Keneged Beis HaMikdash. It says, Kemigdal David Tzavorech. Ze Beis HaMikdash. The two, Ramosha says, he said he's Mekabel from his Rebbes. He says, Kibalnu, he doesn't say where it is. It's quite classic. That later there was an iteration of this. And he says that's Christianity. He says the representation of the conceptually and then symbolically by the cross was a migdal and an ear. The proliferation out in space is an ear, and a migdal is the vertical axis.
Okay.
And it is that idea we're all going to rally around this one idea. The one idea then, and in concept,
Whoa.
it's an iteration of Deira Paloga, but it is destined to not to work because
Artificial.
Lama Rog Shugoyim Ulaumim Yegurik is Lama Reizim Nois Du Yochad Tehillim Beis Al Hashem Va'al Mashiachai. The alliance, and it appears to be a yichud and an achdus, but it's al Hashem va'al Mashiachai. There is only one achdus, and it can only be our achdus. Ata echad v'shimcha echad, umika'amcha Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz. Why? Why are we goy echad ba'aretz? Only because we rally around the only thing that is real achdus. So Shema Yisrael, the Gemara says, what does Hashem put on his tefillin? Hashem Baruch is maniach tefillin. We've got in our tefillin, Shema Yisrael, Shema. What does he have? Umi ka'amcha Yisrael, goy echad ba'aretz. That's the reflection of that, and therefore there is a, so to speak, a kashira, a connection of tefillin, because only that can be real achdus. It now takes on a new dimension, a new depth when we talk about why Achdus is so important. Achdus is important. It's not just be nice to each other, which of course is important, because it is to appreciate that there is only one concept of one, and to the extent that we have this common striving towards this, to that extent we will be echad. Anything else will, of necessity, lead to ego and fragmentation. L'ta'ava yevakeish nifrod. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says very beautifully. By the way, he says that's why migdal is degel with the mem in front. But the Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says the reason that we had the degolim in the midbar, which is each tribe and group of tribes had its own flag, its own color, its own persona, its own stone, its own identity, etc. Now that, he says that was only done once we had the Mishkan, the central rallying point where we could all, because it is when you bring your own unique personality and koiches to the table, but the tzvek, the goal, the destination is the center, which is the Mishkan, the Mikdash, the Torah. Only then can that be Achdus. First of all, Achdus is not homogeneous. Everybody looks the same, thinks the same. We have to think the same in the sense of being Ovdei Hashem, but how you get there, Yekka, Sfard, Ashkenaz, Hasidus, whatever, as long as it is with a Chover ani l'choil asher yireucha l'shomer pikudecha. There's a loyalty to Torah, but then an expression of the different riboy of the different aspects of humanity. If they are focused on that one thing, then that is real achdus, and that is the goal. That is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Okay, I think I've said it. There's more to say, but that's an important idea. Yes, Gabby.
No. Just for the you said the Beit HaMikdash is also in the same Tzelem. It's also a representation of Adam. So you said everyone has his function, but they're all
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay.
It fits.
Yeah, it's one big sugya. Everything is echad. Yeah, need to just be appreciated and be aware of it. Okay, one last tiny little point. I'll tell you a Briskerov. There's a Briskerov here. You've got it on. I printed it out for you. Well, I printed out the Yerushalmi, page 8. It's source number 18. I put here. Yeah, it says at the,
This no block.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So go to the second paragraph here, and it says a very interesting Yerushalmi in Brachas.
Sorry, this is
V'hinei b'Yerushalmi.
it's Briscoe, yeah?
And then, well, no, yes, no.
The source.
Actually not.
No.
It actually isn't. It's Yerushalmi. I'll come to the Briskerov in a minute.
Winas Ritzler.
Yeah, he's Sorotskin, but I wanted to bring something out of this, which the Briskerov is actually in Aviezri in the Reb Shach and Hilchos Tshuva, which. V'hinei b'Yerushalmi is a beautiful Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says, "Mipnei ma korin shnei parshas halalu b'chol yom." Why do we read Shema every day? These two parshas. Mipnei she'aseres hadibros klulim bahem anochi Hashem Elokecha. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu. Lo yeh lecha elokim acherim al panai Hashem Echad. The Yerushalmi says that, and the Yerushalmi goes through all of it. We're not going to do that, but the Yerushalmi says that the Aseres Hadibros contain. Shema contains within it all of the Aseres Hadibros, and then it divides the first pasuk, and it says as follows: Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu is Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Hashem Elokeinu is Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Hashem Echad is Lo Yeh Lecha Elokim Acherim. Okay? So he says, the Rabbi Yitzchak Sorotzkin says, that when you're reading the first pasuk of Kriya Shema, you are being Mekayim 3 mitzvahs. To Emunah in Hashem, negating anything else, and the mitzvah of Kriya Shema. You're actually being Mekayim 3 mitzvahs d'oraisa. Quite amazing. Okay, he's got a nice lomdus on it, and why he separated it, and you can look at that in your own time. But the Briskerov, Reb Shach quotes the Briskerov as saying the following. And it's actually the same place where Reb Shach in his Sefer Aviezer and Hilchos Tshuva, we quoted this many, many moons ago, when we asked him, the Reb Shach asked the Briskerov, why is there a mitzvah of emunah? Surely it's seichel, it's das. And he said, where your seichel finishes, that's where emunah starts. And and he said he'd asked his father Reb Chaim, remember we did this before, it's in you. And then he goes on to say the following. He then said, then the Briskerov developed this idea using this Yerushalmi and said the following. The Gemara says in Brachas, I think it's Daf Yud Gimel, the Gemara says that when it comes to Hashem Echad, Kivan Da'am Lichte, once you've been Mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, up, down, and all around, Sulay Tzrichas, you're done. Game over. You don't need to go think any further. That's it. He's Echad, up, down, all around. Yeah, that's all you need. Asked the Briskerov, so why didn't the Gemara comment on the first part of the pasuk of Hashem Elokeinu? Why is it only on Hashem Echad? Says the Briskerov, because with this Yerushalmi that has divided this pasuk, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu is Anochi. Lo Yeh Lecha is Yichud. Now it makes sense with everything that we have discussed, because Hashem Elokeinu, that he exists, you can't say anything, give any borders or limitations or dimensions or anything. We can't say anything about him. Hashem Elokeinu. When it comes to Echad, which is the negation of anything else, then it's subject to our understanding, as we have been discussing all week, because it's the negation, and there you can say, how far do I need to negate? You only need to negate, only there. That's all. That's why it's in that bit. Just a nice little nakuda from the Briskerov. And with this, my friends, I think we could do Yichud Hashem forever, and we should, because it is the Ikar Shahakol Toloi Boy, as the Rambam himself said. But Bli Neder, Monday we will start Hagshama. Not Hagshama. We'll start talking about Hashem's incorporeality.